Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. In today's lesson, we're going to start with the English. We are on the chapter number 2, that is Advent. That this is part 2 of Spectrum Modern History, chapter number 4, I believe. Just let me know in the comment section which chapter is this. We're going to start with the English. In the last part, we finished with the Dutch, and let's do the English with the Charter of Queen Elizabeth I. Francis Drake's voyage around the world in 1580 and the English victory over the Spanish Armada in 1588 generated a new sense of enterprise in the British, encouraging sailors to venture out in the east. As the knowledge grew of high profits earned by the Portuguese in eastern trade, English traders too wanted a share. So in 1599, a group of English merchants calling themselves the Merchant Adventurers formed a company. On December 31st, 1600, Queen Elizabeth I issued a charter with rights of exclusive trading to a company named Governor and Company of Merchants of London trading into East Indies. Initially, the monopoly of 15 years was granted, which in May 1609 was extended indefinitely by a fresh charter. As the Dutch were already concentrating more on the East Indies, English turned to India in search of textiles and other commodities of trade. Progress of the English company. Foothold in the west and south. Captain William Hawkins, if you remember, arrived at the court of Jahangir in April 1609 itself, but the mission to establish a factory at Surat did not succeed due to opposition from the Portuguese. And Hawkins left Agra in November 1611. In 1611, the English had started trading at Masuli Patnam on the southeastern coast of India and later established a factory there in 1616, Masuli Patnam. In 1612, that Captain Thomas Best defeated the Portuguese in the Sea of Surat. So Captain Thomas Best was best at defeating Portuguese at the port of Surat. This was in 1612. Defeated the Portuguese in the Sea of Surat and impressed Jahangir granted permission to English in early 1613 to establish a factory at Surat under Thomas Aldworth. So Thomas Aldworth. Perfect. In 1615, so Thomas Roe. So this is also a Thomas and this is Roe, came as an accredited ambassador of James I to the court of Jahangir, staying on there till February 1616. Though he was unsuccessful in concluding a commercial treaty with the Mughal Emperor, he was able to secure a number of privileges, including permission to set up factories at Agra, Ahmedabad and Bharuch. The English company did not have a smooth progress. They had to contend with the Portuguese and Dutch in the beginning, but the changing situation helped them and turned things in their favor. Bombay had been gifted to King Charles II by the King of Portugal as a dowry when Charles married the Portuguese princess Catherine in 1662. So Bombay was a dowry to the English from the Portuguese. Bombay was given over to the East India Company on an annual payment of £10 only in 1668. Bombay was given over to the East India Company on an annual payment of £10. Okay. Later, Bombay was made headquarters by shifting the seat of Western Presidency from Surat to Bombay in 1687. So there was a tacit peace between English and the Portuguese now. There was also an Anglo-Dutch compromise, as mentioned earlier, by which Dutch agreed not to interfere in the English company's trade in India. Because we have seen earlier part that Dutch maintained their operations in Indonesia, right? And when was this? This was in 1667. Thus, the English were rid of two archivals in India. So, how did English win over the two archivals in India? The first was Portuguese when Charles married Catherine in around 1662. contended with the Portuguese and Dutch in the beginning, but the changing situation helped them turn in the favor. Bombay had been gifted to King Charles II by the King of Portugal. Yes, of course. So Portugal gifted Bombay as dowry to King Charles, and when he was married to Catherine, this was happening in 1662, and Dutch problem was solved in 1667 when Dutch got Indonesia and England or East India Company got India. The English company's position was improved by Golden Farman. Golden Farman issued to them by the Sultan of Golconda in 1632 on payment of 500 pagodas a year. They earned the privilege of trading freely in the ports of Golconda. A member of the Masuli Patnam Council, the British merchant Francis Day, in 1639. So I'm going to write the name Francis Day in 1639 received from the ruler of Chandragiri permission to build a fortified factory at Madras, which later became the Fort St. George and replaced Masuli Patnam as the headquarters of the English settlements in South India. Thereafter, the English extended their trading activities to the east and started factories at Hariharpur in the Mahanadi Delta and at Balasore in Odisha in 1633. I'm going to repeat the last paragraph again. I was a little off. Okay. A member of the Masuli Patnam Council, the British merchant Francis Day in 1639 received from the ruler of Chandragiri permission to build a fortified factory at Madras, okay, which later became Fort St. George and replaced Masuli Patnam as the headquarters of English settlements in South India, okay. Thereafter, the English extended their trading activities to the east and started factories at Hariharpur and Mahanadi Delta at Malasore in Odisha in 1633. Okay, so we now know after the Golden Farman was issued by Sultan of Golconda, the payment of 500 pagodas a year, they earned the privilege of trading freely in the ports of Golconda. Now what happened was Francis Day created in 1639. Francis Day, British merchant, he created a fortified factory at Madras, and this fort became Fort St. George, and this replaced the Masuli Patnam as the headquarters. Okay, so first headquarters was Masuli Patnam and then it was Madras. Masuli Patnam to Madras. So this is important, right? Masuli Patnam, then Madras. Masuli Patnam happened to be because the Sultan of Golconda gave the Golden Farman, and after 1639, Madras became the capital. Thereafter, English extended their trading activity. So after Madras became the capital, the Britishers set up their factories in Hariharpur in the Mahanadi Delta and at Balasore in Odisha. So they expanded to the east in 1633. Okay, so Madras happened after this. Alright, understood. Foothold in Bengal. Bengal was then a large and rich province in India, advanced in trade and commerce. Commercial and political control over Bengal naturally appeared an attractive proposition to the profit-seeking English merchants. Bengal was also an important province of the Mughal Empire. Shah Shuja, the Subadar or governor of Bengal in 1651, allowed the English to trade in Bengal in return for an annual payment of rupees 3,000 in lieu of all the duties. Factories in Bengal were started at Hooghly 1651 and other places like Kasim Bazar, Patna and Rajmahal. Nevertheless, despite the privileges of the Farmans, the company's business was now and then obstructed by custom officers in the local checkpost who asked for payment of tolls. In pursuance of its change policy, the company wanted to have a fortified settlement at Hooghly. So was the forts could be used if necessary. William Hedges, the first agent and governor of the company in Bengal, appealed to Shaista Khan, the Mughal governor of Bengal, in August 1682 for redressal of grievance. As nothing came out of the appeal, hostilities broke out between the English and the Mughals. 4 years later, Hooghly was sacked by Imperial Mughals in October 1686. You remember this, right? When the Mughals were having an off with the Portuguese, as their activities, pirate activities, were increasing in Hooghly, the Mughals attacked Hooghly, right, in October 1686. Now, this becomes an important point. The English retaliated by capturing the imperial forts at Thana, modern Garden Reach, raiding Hijli in East Midnapur, and storming the Mughal fortifications at Balasore. However, the English were forced to leave Hooghly and were sent to an unhealthy location at the mouth of river Ganga. After the Mughal raid on Hooghly, Job Charnock, a company agent, started negotiations with the Mughals so as to return to a place called Sultanati. Charnock signed a treaty with the Mughals in February 1619 and returned to Sultanati in August 1690. Thus, an English factory was established on February 10th, 1691. What is this? Let's understand this. Thus, an English factory was established on February 10, 1961. The day an imperial firman was issued permitting the English to continue contently to trade their trade in Bengal on payment of rupees 3,000 a year in lieu of all the dues. Alright, so after the Mughal raid on Hooghly, Job Charnock, a company agent, started negotiations with the Mughals so as to return to a place called Sultanati. Charnock signed a treaty with the Mughals in February 1619 and returned to Sultanati in August 1690. Thus, an English factory, February 10, 1691, Imperial Firman was issued permitting the English to continue contently. A zamindar in the Bardhaman district, Shobha Singh, rebelled, subsequently giving the English the pretext they were looking for to fortify their settlement at Sultanati in 1696. In 1698, the English succeeded in getting the permission to buy the zamindari of 3 villages of Sultanati, Gobindapur and Kalikatta, that is Kalighat, from their owners on payment of rupees 1200. The fortified settlement was named Fort William in the year 1700, when it also became the seat of Eastern Presidency, Calcutta, with Sir Charles Eyre as its first president. You have to remember this because Fort William was created as in Calcutta in 1700s, whereas Fort St. George was made in which year? Fort St. George, headquarters of 1639, right? So Fort St. George was built in 1639 and then or 1633. We have to understand this. But we know that Fort Williams was built in 1700s. In 1715, an English mission led by John Surman to the court of the Mughal Emperor Farooq Siyar secured 3 famous firmans, giving the company many valuable privileges in Bengal, Gujarat and Hyderabad. This is important. So we can write it as HBG. Yes, this works. Hyderabad, Bengal and Gujarat. The firmans thus obtained were regarded the Magna Carta of the company. Their important terms were: in Bengal, the company's imports and exports were exempted from additional customs duties, excepting the annual payment of rupees 3,000 rupees as settled earlier. The company was permitted to issue dastaks or passes for the transportation of such goods. The company was permitted to rent more lands around Calcutta. In Hyderabad, the company retained its existing privilege of freedom from duties in trade and had to pay the prevailing rent only for Madras. In Surat, for an annual payment of rupees 10,000 rupees, the East India Company was exempted from the levy of all duties. It was decreed that the coins of the company minted at Bombay were to have currency throughout the Mughal Empire. This is interesting. Apparently, the English East India Company managed to earn a number of trading concessions in Bengal from the Mughal authority by means of flattery and diplomacy. Apparently, the English East India Company managed to earn a number of trading concessions in Bengal from the Mughal authority by the means of flattery and diplomacy. But the English had to vanquish the French before they could be rid of competitors and establish their complete sway over India. Merging of two English companies. After the English Revolution of 1688, the Whigs, with their enhanced influence, opposed the monopoly of East India Company. Thus, a rival company was formed which deputed Sir William Norris as its ambassador to the court of Aurangzeb. This was in January 1701 to April of 1702 to gain trading privileges for itself. The new company, however, proved a failure. Under the pressure from the Crown and the Parliament, the two companies were amalgamated in 1708 under the title of United Company of Merchants of England, trading to the East Indies. This was the East India Company from 1708 to 1873, which was to establish British political power in India. This was the history of English, and I'm pretty impressed. This is a very interesting history. Tough to remember, Fort St. George, Fort Williams, but yes, this is what it is. And you don't have to mug up everything, it's just like a story that happens stage by stage, and we just have to bring the pieces together to understand each and everything. Hope you liked it. There will be more 3 to 4 readings required to understand this and get this into our heads, I understand, but yes, this is what we are here for. We are in here to enjoy the journey and to love the process and to not think about the results at the end. This is what this journey is about. So thank you everyone, this was it. Thank you for tuning in. All the very best for exams. Do stay fresh, do stay committed to this, and we will again and again we're gonna crack this examination because we are worth it and we are made for it. So thank you everyone for tuning in. All the very best. Do share and subscribe the channel and stay tuned for more videos.